12 for Parramatta. 1 forced drop out to 3, 0 40-20s, 352 tackles played, 342. 1 ruck infringement against Parramatta, 1 inside the 10 for Penrith and 2 for Parramatta. 5 penalties conceded to 3, 10 errors to 14, and a sin bin for Penrith. Martin with 43 tackles, Reid with 45, To'o with 238 running metres, and Paulo with 166. Coruscant missed 7 tackles, made 31. Reid missed 5 and made 45. And Gutherson was probably the worst of the lot, with they missed 4 tackles and made 6.
I guess I've got to issue a public apology. Action Bailey was on my case about my Penrith bludgeoning. But, yeah, who was I to ever doubt them? They were absolutely a sensational bun. Oh, hello, you want to say something? Cool.
No, Barney can go first and then I'll
You can see what Nathan's been doing for the last 5 weeks. Yeah. He's been practicing his bombs because I don't think he miskicked one for the entire night. And his running game was fantastic as well. So the 2 things obviously you can work on when you're not part of the team is your fitness and your running and your kicking game. And he came back an absolute treat. Yeah, what a great weekend of footy, and it started with a cracker with. I thought it was super competitive, especially obviously in the first half when it's 7-6 at half time. You can't say much else. But even 10 or 15 minutes into that second half, I thought it was a very competitive game. I thought Parramatta actually had the edge for the first probably 20 minutes of the game. I thought they were on top through the middle of the field, and they seemed to be pressing Penrith early without making any sort of that inroads to be able to get that final touch. But I thought they were on top in the middle of the field. Nathan's bombs obviously were the difference in that first half, terrorising poor old Walker Blake.
I just want to mention, the other thing was when Penrith were under the hammer, their back 5 was sensational.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely brilliant, bringing them back out
They've
of
done it all year, and they stood up again.
It was really noticeable here because their forwards were getting smashed for the first 20.
They were. And as said, definitely the difference with the bombs early, they got that first try. There was a really nice finish as well. From To'o, he had a fantastic game, I thought. Barging over and beating people with footwork. But I thought there was a big turning point in the first half when Paulo got taken off the field. There was a massive lift in intensity from Penrith, I thought. Their line speed increased and their physicality in defence. Like Leota and Fisher-Harris went out of their way to make sure that they were belting blokes, tackle after tackle. Yep. The minute Paulo went off the field, and I don't know how many. I think there was probably... It was
literally tackle off tackle. One would line up, and then the next one would line up. All right, I'll get the next bloke.
8 out of those 12 tackles was either Fisher-Harris or Leota just belting somebody.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of sting out of the forwards for Parramatta. And and then Penrith just did what they do. They just kept ramping it up physically, and they lifted the intensity of the running game, and they got quicker and quicker, and Parramatta just couldn't keep with them, to be honest. They completely closed Parramatta down there for that probably the 15-minute period once Paulo went off, and Parramatta couldn't get on the front foot at all. And then they just turned the screws, increased the pressure. As we mentioned, Cleary's kicking game was fantastic. I don't think I've seen much of a better kicking game in a final series.
I thought about it. It was last year's grand final.
Yeah.
This was as close to a 10 out of 10 game as you'll ever see from a halfback in a pressure game. It was incredible.
And Parramatta didn't seem to get back on top until probably the start of the second half, where they did start well for 10 or 15 minutes in that second half. But, Penrith just kept ramping it up, and Parramatta couldn't go with them. I thought, where was he? The lovely finish from To'o, where he, out in the wing there, where he's cut back inside and beaten 3 blokes and then pushed another one off on the way to the try line. I thought that was another turning point in this game. And then Reid has a shot for field goal, and then the very next set, Mitch Moses has a shot for field goal. Very next set, Cleary walks down and just goes, "I'll show you how it's done, buddy."
It was almost like you went.
I was going to say, would Nathan Cleary have taken that shot for field goal if Mitch Moses didn't?
Probably not on
absolutely
that set,
shank it.
I reckon he would have had a crack before half time, but the fact that it happened and then the very next set, they go down there and he just goes, 35 out, I'll show you how it's done. Bang, straight down the middle. I thought that was...
And they set up, as soon as, from the first play of that set, they set up beautifully for that.
Yep. As I said, I thought Parramatta matched it for 10 or 15 in the first half, but they dropped off noticeably in the physicality. They looked tired, especially in the last 20 minutes of the game. And then Cleary just started cutting them to pieces, and it wasn't just his kicking game. I thought some of the runs that he had were tremendous, where he just cut back off his left foot and left people for dead. And I think he made 2 line breaks there in the space of about 10 minutes, which one set up a try, and then Fish crashed over, and it was pretty much all over. Parramatta started to look really tired in that last 20 minutes of the game. I thought Yo, Kikau and Leota were strong performances for Penrith. Paulo and Papali'i, and you could add Kafusi. I thought he had a pretty good impact off the bench for Parramatta. Matched them, but Madison and Reid were their best forwards, which they do week after week for this team.
Reid is such a loss next year, like a serious loss and a serious gain for Canterbury.
Yeah, he's very clever down on the line with the way he picks
giving
his
Burton
lead runners.
Sort of, as you'd say, time and space and clean delivery is going to be massive next year. And adding that 50 tackles, because his defence was sensational
absolutely
again. Yeah.
It was. And even if he does get beaten phically, he still generally hangs on until someone comes over and finishes it off. I thought Moses was very good until he got knocked out. Obviously, another big turning point in the match. To'o and Edwards were constantly threatening the line. Just the way they chime in, and you can see the defence get on the back foot as soon as one of them touch it, and they're not sure what's going to happen next. Fisher, Harris, and Cleary were absolutely superb in this game. And they were the benchmarks. They were the reason that they won so dominantly, I thought.
Well, it'd be nice if I could watch this fucking game without people standing on their seats in front of me. Look, I'll get to this fucking shit abysmal stadium itself a bit later on.
But we've got to keep it, Ollie. We've got to keep it.
Well,
I suppose you can't change the fans, can you?
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the fans,
shout out to Penrith fans. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The lovely Penrith fans who like to stand on their fucking seat when people are yelling at them to sit down, and they're just standing there acting oblivious, like. No one else needs to watch the game because they're up and they're cheering and they're turning around trying to get everyone else to cheer, and everyone's looking angry at them because we don't know what we're cheering because we can't see the field. Thank God for screens in stadiums, by the way, because I reckon I would have watched half this game on the screen, just not being bothered. And the bloke who was directly in front of me kept sitting like on his seat, like on the back of his seat, and it looked like the thing was about to snap, and I'm about to have this 150-pound bloke
covering your eyes so you don't get plastic shards into your face.
But anyway, I thought, look, the first half, I'd say overall was pretty even. I would just give Parramatta the edge as well because of just the little errors Penrith sort of had, like Edwards and that early. That was really the difference maker for me in that first half. And even the first 15 minutes or so of the second half, I think Parramatta probably looked a little more likely, especially when they got in front with that penalty goal. But then you take into account Cleary's kicking game, and when Mitch Moses got taken off the field, their controlling half when Cleary was in red-hot form, it's just something that they couldn't keep up with.
Once Moses sort of hit they knew they went, oh, we're fucked now.
Yeah, especially the way that Cleary was playing. And we sort of spoke about how, yes, Cleary could come back rusty, but he could also come back fresh and on top of his game, and that's what he did. And I think for me, at least for his kicking game and for what he was able to do, he's probably the man of the match for me. But Brian To'o, special mention as well, because it's his best game of the year, I think, and it's also pretty much the performance he'd be putting in every week last season. But I guess he sort of just timed his run well, as we like to say about certain players in the finals now. And
someone else mentioned to me that, he hasn't done much this year, but two things. One, he's on the opposite side of the field.
They actually have players they can get the ball to now.
Now they've got the full complement back. The other one, like, he did get through an Origin series. He did get through everything else. So
he still does his running meters. While he hasn't been topping 200 every week, he's still been up between 150 and 200 majority of the time. I think he's carried a couple of niggles during the year as well, to be honest. There's been a few times where you've seen him get into the backfield and he just hasn't been as quick as he was the year before. So I think he may have been carrying a couple of lower leg injuries during the season. And as you mentioned, I think Origin just takes a lot out of these guys. You'll notice the majority, or at least half of both Origin sides, don't come back the same player for at least 2 or 3 weeks after the Origin series.
Or they do. They'll have like that one more peak, and then that's it.
Drop off for a couple of weeks. Well, they generally always need at least 2 or 3 weeks to sort of recover.
It makes it tricky for us because when you look at all the time we've done the show for 3 years, we try and analyse every game and try and get a meaning out of all of it. And sometimes you just got to go, oh, well, it doesn't mean like we'll worry about it in 6 weeks, which we try and maybe overplay sometimes, maybe we underplay it. But
well, with To'o in particular as well, I think it's important to take into account that, what was it, round 2, he had an injury that put him out for 6 weeks, and I feel like he sort of came back from that slow. Probably on form shouldn't have played Origin, but he did, and I think as well that probably made things a bit more complicated as well. But as I said, timing you run correctly. He's obviously been back since Origin and been able to build his form back up, and I don't know, Penrith might see him as a bit more of an option as well now. You talk about actually having Taylor May and Isaac Tago on another edge, and they've been on fire as well. But, yeah.
You're now playing the best teams as well, and they're going to set up on that left edge, obviously, in defence and try a few different structures to try and shut down that side. So I think you will probably see a few more opportunities on Penrith's right in a few different games.
You've also got to take into account, like, if it's not Ivan, it's Seraldo or someone. There's a very, very smart coach in that system, and they're about to lose 2 of them. So next year's a big year for Ivan because they're about to lose Seraldo and Walker. Andrews or Pearce. It's the other guy that's going to the Warriors.
Cleary's about to lose his support staff, and it's not even because his team's been shit, Paul.
And funnily enough, they didn't really jump at bringing Barrett back, did they? But that's given
I'm
losing.
sure, wasn't he the one who made Cleary a good player or something?
I suppose. So I've been told. But when you look at how they played, and there'll be friends of the show and listeners screaming at us to not talk about Waka, so we'll get to him in a second. But how they played was to bomb to Waka, who is Waka, as we mentioned last week, and managed to muff those 2 early ones, put themselves under pressure. They both led to points. And more pressure in the second half. I think his first 3 out of 4 he dropped.
Yeah, they tested Sivo once or twice, but then turned him around,
so
kicked
the next
him behind
thing,
him.
what he did, Cleary's first kick to Sivo was an inside-out kick. So not only we know he's got this turning circle of the QE too, he's not only kicked to him, he's kicked late to him on the wrong foot, and so Sivo's had that more time, and it's led to more pressure. And then once they started tiring out, that's when they went to To'o. He was able to burrow, and it was just very, very clever how they picked both sides of that field apart and left Gutho with. Sort of took Gutho out of the game. It was, and also shut down very well the back rowers. Papali didn't do a lot, and Lane, I can't remember him having any run of effect. And that was they were edges that had conceded points.
Papali did try to get himself involved, but he ended up playing as a front rower because there wasn't any space for him out wide.
I don't think he did so horribly either. I thought
he wasn't offensive, but he wasn't destructive
yeah.
either. And Lane didn't get the holes we thought he might on the back of some of the defence we'd seen from Penrith in the last month, and it was I thought they just analysed Parramatta perfectly, really. And yeah, we mentioned when I say 10 out of 10 for Cleary, it wasn't just his kicking, as you said, it was the running, his timing, and his defence at times. You know, a couple of hits when it counted.
He's probably the best defensive half in the game, really.
Struggle to think of a half back. Not too many others. Yeah. 5'8", I'd have to think about for a minute. And there's not too many better than him. Even in that, you know what? There probably isn't either. So, Waka, he had a night out.
Didn't he? Like, good luck catching him. I don't care who you are. Like, there's not many blokes that have stood under those type of knuckle bombs, and there's not many guys that hit him the same way as Cleary either. Like, you get the torpedo ones that swirl around and go side to side, but the way he hits that one flat on the belly and it rocks from either side and then it swings late. Good luck getting underneath him.
There's 3. There's him, Burton, and Dewey does them.
Yeah.
And frustrates the shit out of me because you only do 2, and you're like, why don't you just go down there and put them up? But
yeah, well, Waka's always had an issue, whether it be defensively or under the high ball, and they obviously went there knowing this, and they peppered the poor bloke for a good 40 to 50 minutes in the start of this game.
And perhaps allow him to the slaughter, but again, we've got to mention Jacob Arthur coming on here. He added little, and his defence.
Did he play 7 minutes or something?
I felt bad for him.
He played 20. Oh, that's right, because Moses got knocked out.
21 minutes.
Unfortunately, his biggest involvement was kicking the ball out on the field, and then he did.
And missed some tackles.
Did nothing, pretty much. I do feel bad because you pretty much, after everything you sort of copped this year, whether fair or unfair, you're essentially sending a lamb out to slaughter.
Yeah,
it's like in the position they were in, the pressure, everything, you're sending him out to.
The forwards had pretty
not
much
of a
packed up
chance
because they'd been bashed for 60
yeah,
minutes.
The rest of the team had given up.
But and ultimately, what else could they do with it?
Yeah,
you couldn't just send out Kafusi or Bakatoa again.
I don't think you can
beyond
blame
making a tackle.
Yeah, you can't blame Jake Arthur for that.
Ah,
the
absolutely.
whole thing. So,
Look,
are we?
Penrith $1.20 now, I suppose. I've got to admit
Yeah,
it.
well-
They are anyway, but I think I've got to come to the party and say,
Well-
if someone's going to beat Penrith, it's going to be a mighty effort.
Someone's going to beat Penrith. They're going to have to score a minimum 30
With
points,
two-
and I don't see how
I
many
can't see it
teams
now.
are going to be able to do it.
It's
but-
now the best chance is now Souths, and that'll be like Latrell, Clive Churchilling of all Clive Churchills.
I know I've been
Well, the
saying
three
it for
teams
half
that
the
have
year, but-
points in them are Cowboys, Sharks, and Souths. And it's for someone to dominate a game. Yeah, it probably is Latrell to be able to put 2 or 3 on himself. Maybe Val if he can get a matchup that he likes.
And
but,
Tom Burgess fresh
you know what
back
I mean?
and having a game of his life trying to match these blokes. But
And the Cowboys will put in an 80-minute performance through the middle. So I've probably got Cowboys second at the moment. That'd be probably the best chance to beat Penrith. But
Well, I'm now. Before I was saying it, Penrith will probably just win the comp everything. I'm now saying they will. Like just looking, and you look even just looking at the weekend, in terms of one team, that was the most complete individual performance from a team.
And
taking out how good a game was or anything, that was the complete performance.
and ever two things are, you look across the rest of these games, teams are now busted, and they got through it unscathed.
Yeah, well,
And get a week off. They're going to come back fresh again to pick up some pieces. It's going to be a mighty effort to knock them off.
Well,
and by the same token, Cowboys' week off is now worth its weight in
Sharks and
gold.
Cowboys, are, in my opinion, are the
They're
only
still in
two
it.
teams that can probably match Penrith. But Sharks can only match them for an hour. I think the Cowboys could probably match them for 70 minutes.
what makes it
But-
scary as well is that
Which is
probably
what we saw.
the rest
in
of
season proper.
the rest of the teams, I'd argue, maybe other than the Roosters, because they were too busy getting frustrated and potting themselves. But everyone else put in a high quality, one of their best performances of the season. Right? I still don't think it was as good as what Penrith pulled out. That's-
And the
Agree,
Raiders
agree.
could probably beat them in the forwards for a big part of the
Yeah.
match, but their outside backs aren't going to match Penrith.
I'm with you. And you've got to... Thing is, the dynasty's now... It's not over, but the decline, in theory, is coming next year slightly because you're going to lose Appy, which is massive. You're going
The
to
only
lose...
thing is, it only takes one game. Like if Penrith are off for half an hour, then
It could be
they could get
That's
beaten.
right. Half hour's enough. Like everyone. What do we do here? Do we have a player of finals? I can't even remember what
Yeah,
called.
Well, it's
So
got to be
it's-
the something of Barnabas, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
but
Because
that's
we
a
had the
bit of a dumb
Daggy
name.
M, the Ollie
Have to go
Lewis,
back
So
and
it's
listen, but-
anyways, right in with names for the Barney Trophy.
the Barney Lewis medal or something.
Well, Cleary
No,
got
it's
3 points. It's simple
Yeah.
as that. And if you didn't get 3 points, I don't know what game you're watching. I had Fisher Harris for 2, and then I either had Brian To'o, Reed Marnie, or Moses for the 1.
Yeah, I'll go To'o.
I go To'o.
I am
think
in
you gotta
accord
go
there.
To'o.